This week's episode of The Clear Out was recorded on the 20th of April 2022 at home in Wicklow. And it is a discussion of tolerance in a social sense. This discussion is prompted by a hate crime that happened in Ireland in the last week or so that left two gay men murdered, and it just got me thinking about the nature of social tolerance and intolerance, and I wanted to really look at what the template is for personal freedom and what we as a society agree to tolerate and what we agree to be intolerant of, and which of those two positions is the greater. And I refer to the thinking of two English philosophers from the past, John Locke, the empiricist, and John Stuart Mill, the utilitarian, both of whom belong to a tradition of political and civic liberalism that informs the nature of the episode today. So yeah, that's what's coming up. It's I suppose it's kind of it's heavy enough, but I think it's a good subject to look into, and I reflect on my own thoughts around homophobia and LGBTQI, the struggle of that community, and what the stakes are, and crucially how I feel about a person's individual sexuality having nothing to do with a value system or someone else's morality or ethics, as long as it takes place within consensual terms. So there you go. That's what's coming up. There's also a bit of a rant about Irish politics and Irish governance, and an opportunity I took to express my feelings in the recent census that we had here. And I also talk about media censorship, media sort of mono-narrative, and cancel culture. So actually, now that I think about it, there's quite a lot in today's episode, but hopefully it all hangs together. So come and hang with me for an hour and 15 minutes or so, and see if you can get something out of this. Okay, I'll see you around the corner. Cheers.
Ooh, not gonna change my mind, leaving the dream behind.
Hi, my name is Dara Clear, and you're listening to The Clear Out. Welcome to it. My goodness, it is a beautiful day. Clear blue sky, sun beaming down. Absolutely gorgeous. I was teaching a Tai Chi class out in the garden earlier, and it really was fantastic. I don't know if the Tai Chi was fantastic, but the weather was. Ah, dear. So, how are you? How are you right now? How are you this very moment of your life? Are you pedaling? Are you pedaling smoothly along the flat? Or is it an uphill struggle at the moment? I have a terrible suspicion that there's a lot of uphill struggling going on, and there's a lot of stuff going on, isn't there, in the world, all around us, and I don't know what's happening in your own specific section of existence, what's taking place or unfolding in your own domain, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge, I think, to stay calm and not lose your mind over so many different things. Maybe we need to have the network moment, and be Peter Finch sticking his head out the window and screaming he's not going to take it anymore. I refer to the 70s movie with Faye Dunaway, amongst others. Was Ned Beatty in that as well? A TV station, and a very prescient look at popular media and control of the message and private interference in journalism, in public commentary, and the frustration of people involved and journalists trying to keep their morals and their ethics in the place where they want them and not have to be stifled by censorship or compromise or money-led messaging. Is that not as topical now? Is that not more topical than ever with how we receive news, the messaging that we receive via mainstream media, mainstream channels? Look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not out to take down institutions, but it does seem that a lot of mainstream media has just drifted to a very centrist position, not really nailing their colours to the mast entirely clearly and transparently. And I've said this before. I've said this before on the podcast. Voices. It's my impression over the last 10, 15 years, maybe a bit longer, that voices of the left, more socialist-leaning, socialist-minded voices, have become quieter and less convicted in this time frame I'm talking about. And politicians who used to be on the left are barely recognisable as that anymore. No one's really sure what they stand for or represent. And something has transpired in the media where it just doesn't feel entirely credible or dependable. Now, I wouldn't go to Trumpian extremes and completely dismiss the news, fake news, or I don't lend that any credibility. However, I think sometimes we do have to not just accept what's being presented to us and try and dig a little deeper, or at the very least just question the reliability of the narrative that we're being offered. I did raise this issue at the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Ukraine-Russian conflict. I was just being a little bit circumspect about the sort of one-note presentation of that narrative, as much as I think the invasion and the actions of the Russian military, Putin's kind of directive, I think it's wrong. I think it's been, it's a very wrong-headed move. I think Putin has grossly underestimated the pushback he was going to receive. Although it does seem that Germany has tacitly condoned, or certainly not offered more stern resistance to Russia in the form of sanctions, because it's so dependent on Russian fuel for energy. Anyway, look, I didn't want to go down that road. I wasn't trying to get into a big political discussion right off the bat, but there I went nonetheless. But further to the media narratives, this week in Irish media, two Irish MEPs, two Irish members of European Parliament, have been receiving a lot of attention because they've been outspoken in defence of certain sort of authoritarian regimes. Again, you start using the language, and I think, okay, where did I get that phrase? That's just been bumped over to me from mainstream media. But I haven't dug deep enough into their story to really work out what the extent of their the extent of their commitment to unapproved regimes. So these are two figures who would be considered, not major players in the Irish political scene or in the European political scene, but they seem to have carved out a little corner for themselves, being somewhat iconoclastic and standing up for resisting just the given or the received narrative, and have made a bit of a name for themselves in what I suppose you could objectively call authoritarian institutions in countries like China and Russia, and they get a lot of exposure on their media for not towing the sort of the Western line in terms of the narrative around the actions of those countries, and they seem to be getting a lot of airtime and are perceived and presented as very high profile, high power political movers from the West, but they're sort of being laughed at over here. And there was a big piece in one of the mainstream newspapers here at the weekend, which I read it, and I don't know, I just didn't come away feeling that much clearer about the reason for outrage. It did feel a bit like a hit piece, and I don't know, I just kind of I didn't really know quite what to make of it. I just thought, I don't know what point I'm making here, but I just felt like I don't hardly trust this piece that's kind of going, look at these Egypts and what they're up to and the profile they're enjoying elsewhere. I feel like there's more to it, and then I find myself getting frustrated because I'm like, will someone just kind of lay it out for me in more transparent, more honest terms? What's the real deal here? But I don't know. It's a sign of the times. It's a sign of how we're consuming the events of the world, how we consume political events, and it's like there seems to be just like one hook to hang a story on, and that's what's laid down as dogma, and then it becomes a nice soundbite in your, over your morning coffee or across social media. And again, there's just a lack of, it seems to me anyway, like certainly in mainstream media, there's a lack of coherent and cohesive, and again I use the word transparent, counter narratives. But anyway, look, there you go. Sorry, that's the first 10 minutes gone just like that, and I'm on the clock today. I've got a very tiny window to get this one done, and my opener there is not unconnected to the larger thrust of today's episode, because I do want to talk about society and philosophy, and I'm going to refer to a couple of old English philosophers, John Locke and John Stuart Mill, who really belong to a line of political liberalism, and I'm gonna dig in a little bit deeper on those guys in a while. I did look at both of them when I was a philosophy student back in the day, but yeah, I'm just trying to decide what my starting point is here. I tell you what it is. Look, really, simply, my starting point is this: last week, or within the last week and a half, in the west of Ireland, 2 gay men were murdered in their homes, and it a bit similar to the murder of the young woman at the start of this year when she was out for a run, which I spoke about in an earlier episode this year. The sort of I suppose the the brutality of the attacks, the senselessness of the attacks, the sort of repellent aspect of the attacks that that have led to these deaths have just struck a chord across the country, it would seem. And there was a very strong reaction across the country last week to the murder of these two gay men. And there were a series of vigils and some very outspoken and, in my opinion, righteous condemnation of the attacks, and a condemnation of homophobia. And a prominent imam from a Muslim organisation in Ireland spoke in Dublin and condemned homophobia in all its forms, and the othering of members of LGBTI communities, and anyone who identifies under that under that umbrella term. And I mean, I certainly thought that was a very positive thing to see. I mean, again, I have a knee-jerk, before I engage my brain, I often have a knee-jerk reaction and assume if it's a member of the church speaking, whether it's Islam or whether it's a Catholic church, I often have a knee-jerk assumption that it's going to be a conservative position, and it's refreshing to be surprised and just to be reminded, hold on, things change, attitudes change, and people of the cloth, if you like, imams and priests and whoever, they change too, because there are generational shifts. But I also had the cynical thought that for many organized religions, and this will be more obvious maybe in countries that have ceded ground or enjoyed the revolution towards secularism, and particularly like in Ireland, if you think about the sort of the very negative aspects of the dominance and the control of the Catholic Church in Ireland, and the social repression that came with that, and all the damage that was part of that package, if you will. For I think for many Irish people, they reflect on the rapid sort of ascension away from that part of Irish history into something far more tolerant and inclusive and diverse and progressive. I would argue that you ship out the church and a void. I would argue like a void was left behind. And I mean, I'm not religious. I'm not a churchgoer. That's not my background. That wasn't my childhood background. But I think I do sort of value the presence of the sacred in life, and I value the presence of the spiritual, and I value the presence of places where that can be engaged with in safe ways. But in any case, speaking of safety, I'll go back to really what started my cogs turning for this week's episode was just reflecting on those two men who were killed, and how I think in very unambiguous terms they were victims of hate crime. And it does seem there's a bit of a moratorium on commentary in the media at the moment because the suspect is in custody, and the suspect had a name that suggested he was from or is from perhaps an a Muslim culture. I'm not sure about the details of exactly where he's from, but it did seem to trigger a response of sort of Islamophobia on top of the homophobia. To put that into the kind of into the cauldron, into the mix of the outrage and the disgust, the sort of the horror at the murders last week. And I think that's why the Imam I referred to earlier, felt compelled to speak out. And as I said, a very welcome contribution to the discussion and to the reaction, and nice to see the vigils around the country and people coming out, and members of the LGBTI community. I left out the Q there, didn't I? LGBTQTI communities coming out in solidarity to express their grief, to express their anger. I did see someone on social media kind of reminding people that the pride flag or pride parades, they're not celebrations, they're protests. Now, that's one person's perspective, but certainly a protest as well as a celebration. I think that one of the lines I seem to recall from previous, from seeing something somewhere, it was like, we're queer and we're here. I'm like, yeah, like this idea though that to not be safe, like everyone should feel safe. Now that might not be a realistic idea. I mean, that might be naive in the extreme. We can argue that none of us is ever safe. Really, anything could happen to any of us at any time. However, that could be a little bit disingenuous if you think, well, yeah, fine, but what's your gender? What social class are you from? What are let's look at let's do like a risk analysis, and how likely is it that you are going to be targeted? How likely is it that you're going to be attacked? How safe do you feel? How safe do you feel like walking down the street or the road at night? How safe do you feel being in certain parts of your town, your village, the city, wherever you live? What places do you feel you can safely, confidently walk in anywhere and be yourself comfortably without fear of some form of an attack, whether that's verbal or otherwise, and that's when things get a lot more nuanced and a lot more shaded. And it's like this was kind of the area I was interested in kind of looking at, not specifically safety, but this idea of how do we sort of assess or get a read for where a society is at and where a country is at. Like, what are the prevailing attitudes? So with the Aisling Murphy murder in January, there was an intense period of debate around the topic of violence against women and women being afraid, and the question being asked, like, what was men's role in helping that be a better situation? And I tried to explore that conversation with just with a little bit more complexity than I kind of perceived was happening in the immediate aftermath. And this is the thing, like, when we're emotional, we don't always think clearly. And I think we're living in very sort of emotional times where everyone's kind of subjective experience is being validated to the nth degree. And these sort of screaming matches take place on across social media, and Twitter is a particularly contentious battlefield, and I find myself just like from an anecdotal point of view, Like, I see what Twitter throws up on my phone. Like, they, randomly, algorithmically select someone's tweet for me to look at. It just pops up like a headline on my phone, and it's never something benign. It's never something that's fully clear in what they actually kind of present. It's always a hook. It's always a little stab. It's often someone expressing outrage or indignation. It might involve somebody swearing at someone or at something. And they're always these kind of little cliffhanger, I've done this and this is why. And, it's instant agitation. It's instant provocation. And it's horrible. And I've stopped kind of responding with the sort of human response of, openness and curiosity. And I'm just looking at purely from an analytical point of view, going, let's look at that tweet I've been presented. It's designed to get me to click. It's designed to get me to go down the rabbit hole on Twitter and, and back and forth with all the outraged contributors to this thread, this conversation. And it is an adjutant. It is an irritant. It unsettles. It disrupts. And that is, like, Twitter is a key component in the media landscape now. It's a key component in where discussions happen. It's a key component. It's a key battleground where opinions are, belted off one another. And I think it's one reason I rarely put anything up on Twitter that isn't completely innocuous. Because I'm just like, I just don't want the stress. I don't want the conflict. And yet I do find myself looking at certain people more than others and going, they seem to be able to use Twitter very well to, express themselves and to, represent their brand, whatever. And I go, no, I just haven't got the knack. So I use Twitter merely to go check out what the latest episode of the podcast. See you later. Boom, I'm out. But in any case, looking at the reaction to, the murder, the double murder last week of those guys, and looking at the reaction around the country, I was trying to kind of go, well, what's this telling us? What's this telling us about where we're at? And what can we do better? Like, that was one of my first kind of let's call it a conscientious sort of reaction was, how do you improve this situation so you're not contributing to a structure that might foster or just not impede homophobia, like, so specifically in this case, homophobia. Now, I suppose in my own life, and certainly in my role as a teacher over the years in classrooms, when things came about organically in a classroom where it was an opportunity to, I suppose, fundamentally to encourage, if not actively promote, tolerance, and if not tolerance of action, certainly tolerance of thought, tolerance of thinking. And I was always, from really the very early days of going into classrooms as a replacement teacher, I was sort of always quite a passionate advocate of really of a very sort of humanistic approach to understanding other people, other choices, and whatever I was teaching, if there was to me what seemed like an obvious link or opportunity to raise a question around tolerance, I wouldn't hesitate to take it, because I don't know. I guess I was bringing in certain assumptions about kind of closed-mindedness, or assumptions about maybe other teachers not having sufficient time to, to sort of open the floor to tricky subjects, maybe around, sexuality, or maybe around things like sectarianism even, this kind of area. But this idea then of tolerance, like I found myself thinking last week, what is the best way forward? Because I was trying to think of it in philosophical terms, and the good, or the merit, or the worth of tolerance. And I was kind of looking at that idea in that kind of simplistic form, and kind of going, well, if we're all more tolerant, if tolerant is put forward as a desirable principle of social cohesion, that is, to my mind, that's like, okay, that's a good starting point, that we're going to be tolerant of other people, we're going to be tolerant of other people's choices. I mean, fundamentally, that's the social pact, isn't it? Like, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, we'll agree not to kill each other, and we'll, play by this set of rules that have been laid out. I don't expect you to have exactly the same values as me, but this basic principle of mutual tolerance of difference is how we're going to cohabit in this society. And that is okay. Like, it's certainly not bad. But it can lend itself to non-interference. And non-interference, in the lives of others, you kind of go, well, that's good. Let people, it's kind of a libertarian idea, do what you want. It doesn't affect me, off you go. But non-interference can become a sort of a looking away. And non-interference can become a sort of a disingenuous harmony. And non-interference can be basically the road to conspiracies of silence. And certainly that was a very painful and dark aspect of Irish society when Ireland was really in the in the earlier days of its independence, I suppose, and coming out of colonialism and asserting itself as a sovereign state. But the state and the church were inextricably linked. And I suppose through the 50s and 60s in particular, that social and sexual repression that was, that went hand in hand with the kind of rigid dogmatic Catholicism that held sway in Ireland at that time, was really destructive. And there was a huge intolerance embedded in Catholic dogma, particularly around extramarital sex. And so many young women had horrendous times at the hands of the Catholic Church. And I'm not even going to go to the stories of abuse within other Catholic institutions. But that said, that that's all part of who wasn't talking about it, who was looking the other way, and the fear of the power of the priest, or the parish priest, or just the Catholic Church, the diocese, whatever it was. And I think the diminishment of that power has really been a celebratory note for me in the kind of evolution of the modern Irish identity. Now, that said, and this is a little bit of it's a bit of a segue, and I am going to return to this idea of tolerance momentarily, but just speaking of modern Irish society at the moment, there has been great progress in certain areas, and certainly in terms of sexual diversity and celebration of diversity across the spectrum of sexual identity and gender and what have you in Ireland. I think we've come to a very positive place, and that's probably why last week's murders were so painful. Ireland in, I think, 2015, wasn't it, brought in by kind of popular vote same-sex marriage, and it was by a kind of a resounding majority, and a real bright moment in modern Irish history, and also repealed the Eighth Amendment of the Irish Constitution, which prevented women from seeking abortions, and gave women more rights over their own bodies, which I'm a big fan of in general. So these have been kind of great advances, across Irish society, which couldn't have happened back in that period I was talking about, 50s, 60s, 70s even. Homosexuality, I think, in Ireland was only made legal in 1993. That's really not very long ago at all. But anyway, just at the start of this month in Ireland, we had a census, and the lovely people who are responsible for the census decided, why don't we give people an opportunity to contribute to a time capsule at the end of the census? And I'll just read it out for you here. The time capsule section of the census is just basically a blank page on the census form, and it says, information you provide in this time capsule is optional and is collected voluntarily under Section 24 of the Statistics Act 1993. This content is protected by the same confidentiality protections as all your census data for 100 years. After 100 years, this time capsule will be made available to the public. This space is for handwritten messages only. Photographs or other attachments will be removed and cannot be returned. So I offered my wife the opportunity to put something there, and she wasn't too fussed. I didn't ask my daughter. Maybe that was a bit mean of me. And I was kind of contemplating, this is not coming from any kind of egotistical position of leaving something for posterity, but sort of engaging with an opportunity to record a comment on Ireland at this moment in time. And I'll just read you what I wrote, and you can decide for yourselves whether you think I'm a raving lefty or whatever. But I'll just read you what I wrote here, and it kind of ties in a little bit with what I'm talking about, or maybe a lot. I wrote, there are many things I continue to love about Ireland, and I will never be ashamed to say I am Irish. But for all the strides we have made as a society, it pains me to think that this moment will show that 100 years after the end of the War of Independence, we are still a country that has failed to emerge functionally from the legacy of colonisation. Institutionally and governmentally, there continues to be profound systemic failure. We have yet to be served by a government that has sufficient confidence and moral conviction to lay the groundwork for a long-term vision of economic and social sustainability. We have yet to be served by a government that prioritises the future wellness and security of all the people of this unique and beautiful island. I hope that confidence and vision is the place from which you read this. Dara Clear, age 8.5. So that's what I wrote. I didn't want to make it too, it wasn't meant to be ragey or furiously condemnatory of Ireland in this moment, but I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that isn't working, and I felt, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure I'm not the only one who wrote something along those lines. We've still got a long way to go. There's still way too much social and economic instability in this country, and maybe that's something, not maybe, that's probably part of a global trend. It's probably part of a global pressurization of unbridled capitalism and profiteering, and I don't know. I have insufficient vocabulary to really explore the economic nuances of how we've got to this point. But yeah, there has been a failure. There has been a failure, I think, globally to distribute wealth, to prioritize things that should be fundamental aspects of human thriving across the globe. Some countries have done it better than others. Some countries have failed miserably. Ireland, I don't know. We're a very small country. We're a very small country, and maybe I overestimate how much power the Irish government has to assert its will, and maybe I overestimate how much power an Irish government has to resist the interests and influences of much more powerful players internationally. And when a big tech company waves its checkbook, if anyone is still using a checkbook, I'm not sure how old they are or what's going on in their little head. But if a big tech company waves its checkbook and the Irish government just goes, yep, yes sir, what can we do for you? Or yes ma'am. Apple was using an address in Ireland, which was, seemed to be basically like a tax washing front, and they got caught. And this was done with the blessing of the Irish government. And then I think it was the EU was kind of cracking the whip and said, okay, Apple, you have to pay the Irish government all this tax. And the Irish government were bending over backwards to try and let Apple off the hook and not get them to pay the tax. And that kind of tells you everything you need to know about the Irish political mindset. It's so small. It's so lacking in self-esteem. It's so obsequious. It's pathetic, and it disgusts me. But that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of bad language is floating through my brain at the moment. But that kind of short-term opportunism is a hallmark of the way many Irish governments seem to operate. Very careerist, very what's going to get me through the next election, what's going to help me keep my seat. The historically opposed parties in Ireland of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, two parties which would have had nothing but contempt for each other historically, but they frantically formed an alliance after the last general election in Ireland, because it looked for the first time since the institution of Irish independence that they weren't going to be the party of power. And they were so horrified at this prospect that they threw all their principles out the window and said, let's be friends, because we don't want the other party to get in, Sinn Féin. And Sinn Féin were enjoying a huge boost in popularity because they were being really outspoken about the political failings and institutional failings of the previous governments. and they're basically saying we're not going to tolerate this anymore, and we need a government that doesn't tolerate this kind of failure, particularly in the area of housing. And I mean, the healthcare is in terrible shape here as well. And again, it's a governmental failure. It's not a failure of the individuals. It's not a failure of nurses and doctors who are killing themselves trying to provide service and cater to the Irish populace. It's a failure of the system. It's a failure of investment. It's a failure of vision. It's a failure of planning. And sadly, I think that those things continue to be part and parcel of how Irish governments don't, they're simply not fit for service. Anyway, there you go. This is a political party broadcast on behalf of #blessed. In an ideal world, it would be like this. Now, again, I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I want to go to these two English philosophers who I mentioned earlier, and have a quick look at what they said about tolerance. So I was kind of saying earlier, like this kind of reaction I had to, how do we check the state of the nation? How do we make things better? How, if you're a member of the LGBTQI community, how do you go forward after last week's murders and feel this is a good place to be? Now, the outpouring of public grief and solidarity and anger would certainly be a comfort, but I did see one person on Twitter, as it happens, saying that it was pointed out to him that the day of the murders was 9 years to the day since he'd been gay bashed. And yeah, that just struck me, like that it's, the term, the specificity of, you're gay, so we're just going to attack you. And that hatred and that violence, I'm sort of fascinated fascinated about, where that comes from and where that's located and what does it say about the perpetrator of the crime. I suppose there was speculation last week that perhaps, if the suspect of those murders is a Muslim, was it informed by Muslim beliefs or something from the Quran? My feeling always around the area of homophobia, in whatever form it comes out, if that's directed at someone who's gay or trans or bi or lesbian or whatever, I suppose nowadays I don't necessarily think it's located in an area of morality or as connected to religious dogma or religious teaching. And maybe that's a bit naive, because I suppose in different areas of the world those belief systems are more present and more powerful and more conditioning of someone's mind and mindset and outlook. Personally, I've always felt it indicates the perpetrator's relationship with their own sexuality and their own sexual impulses, and why they perceive, for the sake of my argument, I'm going to use the phrase, why they perceive the other as a threat. From my own personal point of view, I've never felt threatened by homosexuality, because I'm like, yeah, but that's grand. They're not interested in me, and I'm not trying to put it into like a predatorial context. I don't know. It just was like, it doesn't. There's no impact on my own sexual interest or on my own sexuality, my relationship with my own sexuality. And I'm talking about going back to very young age. It just didn't even occur to me to factor in like where does homosexuality fit into my spectrum? And I mean, I'm not, I didn't have an impulse in that direction. My own impulses seem to be always very heterosexual, and homosexuality in the kind of in the mix of, well, how is this going to impact me or the expression of my sexuality, or why would I be threatened by it? It was like just a non-event or a non-entity, and I didn't feel threatened or awkward or put off or intimidated, or I suppose a key component maybe for some people who experience homophobia is repugnance or repulsion, being repelled by the idea of, oh. And I mean, I used to observe that reaction in certain of my male friends, just a sort of a profound physical discomfort, even around the idea of gay sex or being approached by someone who was gay. I mean, my self-esteem was, so chronically low. I mean, I'd be like, "You're gay and you think I'm attractive." I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much." I'm not worthy. But yeah, I mean, like, joking aside, it's like I would still instinctively go to that place if I think some man, as it does seem, broadly, the perpetrators are men of that type of hate crime. I just want to ask them, like, what's the anger? Like, where's this anger and hatred coming from? Why does it have to go this far? We have to lay hands on this person. I mean, I find it profoundly offensive, and I don't know. I'm trying to just say where it sits for me. I mean, the idea that you could stand by and watch someone attack someone because they're gay, and some part of your brain would square that away or legislate it and go, yeah, well, I get. For me, it's like, what are you talking about? It's just so. It's so objectifying, and so it's so non-personal, and yet my argument is that there's a deeply personal component for the person, perpetrating the crime, that they're being driven by a deeply internal reaction or response to homosexuality or whatever it might be. And then anybody can represent the threat, anybody can represent the trigger, and in that way, to me, it's almost like it's as impersonal as having like a fear of spiders or hating cats. I mean, that term should be verboten on this podcast. We're very much a pro cat household. We don't other the cats in this household. So I don't know. Look, I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit rambly, and I apologise, but I'm just sort of sounding it out as I speak and as I record. But again, I'm going to return now to these two English philosophers, because I'm interested in what they had to say about sort of the organisation of social morality, about liberalism, about tolerance, and how it relates to then my counter argument, or my secondary sort of my follow-on thought after that initial response last week of the good of tolerance. I mean, that's what we should all be preaching, is like, let's be tolerant. And then I went to that, to kind of the next logical step for me is it more powerful to be intolerant of bad behavior? Like, is that actually better for society? So then we have to look at the good of intolerance. And so if we're being intolerant of behavior that we instinctively or intellectually and morally recognize this is wrong, this is destructive, this this sort of infringement of someone else's rights compromises me as well, because there's an implication whereby I'm not asserting my right to uphold tolerance if I do nothing. And then it reminds us of the it's a bit hackneyed, it's a bit of a cliche, and I didn't bother going to look up where the quote came from. But you know the line, for evil to thrive, you only need good men to do nothing. We can be all inclusive, and let's go for good women to do nothing as well. So for evil to thrive, you only need good people to do nothing, good humans to do nothing. But of course, even that term, good humans, is very subjective. What is a good human? Because maybe amongst homophobic circles, some people might go, well, that suspect of in the murders is a good human because of his actions. And you get these kind of moral equivalencies. In any case, I'm just going to hit you with just some very brief info about these two English philosophers that I'm I keep mentioning and then fail to actually go there. But I'm going to go there right now. So John Locke, an English philosopher, thinker. He was born in 1632, so 17th century, died in 1704, and he was an empiricist. And basically the idea behind empiricism is everything, knowledge is fact-based. It's what you can see, it's what you can test, it's what you can prove. And John Locke is also considered the father of liberalism. So a sort of a tolerant political attitude, or a tolerant political stance. He argued that humans should have three natural rights: life, liberty, and property. So a right and a duty to preserve their own lives, and a right to own property, a right to be free to live your life and to pursue ownership of property. And his belief was that, and I hold with this really, there's probably a bit more science now to suggest other things can be in place, but he was a great believer in tabula rasa, the blank slate idea of when a human is born, the brain is empty. It's a blank slate. And data, or data if you prefer, data and rules come via the senses. So the sensory processing of the world around us is what brings information into the brain and brings the rules, which presumably come from the society into which we have been born. And fundamentally, I suppose that's it brings in the argument of nurture. That wasn't really where he was coming from, but that's one argument, isn't it? That we're all just products of nurture. But there are studies out there that disprove that idea. Now, I'm going to have to fish it out here, because I was coming to peruse online earlier to refresh my memory. John Locke had a few interesting things to say. He has a famous piece called A Letter Concerning Toleration. That's from 1689. And he argued that tolerance is indeed a Christian virtue. So he was coming from a Christian position. But he said very interestingly, and Ireland certainly would have benefited from this in the 20th century, that the state as a civic association should be concerned only with civic interests, not spiritual ones. So, fundamentally arguing for separation of state and church. Now, he had something else I saw earlier, which I thought was quite interesting. Let me see. No. Maybe not. Doink. Maybe that was the only one. Yeah, okay. So that was John Locke. Great. Yay. So, yeah, if John Locke then is fundamentally advocating for the prioritization of civic interests over spiritual interests or church interests, I mean, straight away that's laying down a different pathway for tolerance, because it's not been informed by religious teachings. It's not been informed by, religious dogma, which we have seen through history has been used to exclude and to demonize and to other. And there's no question that homosexuality, and you think of like how homosexuality has probably been condemned historically under the sort of Abrahamic religions. And so John Locke, you'd have to say, was a progressive, and in that aspect, that's where the sort of the liberalism comes in. So the freedom to pursue one's own life free from persecution. Now, 100 years later, 1806, John Stuart Mill was born. He died in 1873. So, quite a bit later than John Stuart Mill, but following in a similar tradition. And John Stuart Mill was probably primarily known and is primarily known as an advocate of utilitarianism, and he described the principle that held that actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, and wrong as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. A very, without exploring it, like on a very basic level, being led by, I want to exchange out happiness and put in good, because really that's where he was ultimately coming from. So you're talking about, the actions that promote the good, and happiness is integral to the good, and wrong as they produce the bad, which leads to the reverse of happiness. So he had other really interesting things to say in this area as well, and was very big on this idea that society as a whole needs to be moving in the right direction. So he was a great advocate of, again, a very liberal idea of, live your own life. But then he had this idea called the harm principle, where he said, like, the right to self-determination is not unlimited, and that if the actions of an individual are going to harm society, then society has the right to intervene, or the government has the right to intervene. So he had this kind of overarching idea of, the promotion of a sort of a happy society that's moving in the right direction, the direction of good. And he had also, I'm just hitting you with these quotes because I think they all tie into the idea of kind of values and what you stand for, and what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not willing to tolerate. So here's another one from John Stuart Mill. And again, the language, it's gendered because it's of the time. So, don't get all caught up about this. A man who has nothing for which he is willing to fight, nothing which is more important than his own personal safety, is a miserable creature and has no chance of being free unless made and kept so by the exertions of better men than himself. So, there's that one's a little bit thorny. When you get to the end, You can't be free unless you're made free and kept free by the exertions of better men than himself. But I mean, then what are we talking about? Are we talking about public representatives, the people who set the legislation, who set the laws, who raise the bills? Perhaps he was thinking in those terms. He was a parliamentarian. He was a member of the English Parliament as well. But that idea of prioritizing a principle of belief and of ethical belief is a big part of what John Stuart Mill was about as well. So a person who has nothing for which they're willing to fight, nothing that is more important than their own personal safety. So immediately what you're doing is someone is thinking of the bigger picture, and someone is saying, like, if I bring it back to what's kind of driving this this kind of discussion today, someone who kind of believes that people shouldn't be persecuted because of their sexual identity, and shouldn't be persecuted because of their gender identity, and they shouldn't be othered, they shouldn't be abused, they shouldn't be attacked, and we're not going to tolerate that, because there's far more important things that affect us all. And in that regard, I suppose that's a utilitarian idea, like, because it's like the greater good, like what affects all of us. And someone's sexual preference, I don't think it affects us. And you can go into the argument of raising children, having children. I mean, I'd rather see a child happy. I'd rather see a child raised in a solid, happy, loving, supportive, same-sex home, same-sex household, same-sex relationship, than in a crappy heterosexual relationship. So, I mean, that's a whole other area. Like, what does a child need? Does a child need, does a child need strictly, hetero role models? Because you can talk about, male energy, female energy, and it doesn't have to reside in a male body or a female body. And speaking of which, my cousin threw something up online. Not my cousin here at #blessed, another cousin who's very smart in the science area and the astronomy area. That's a nice clue for you now. You'll know which cousin it is if you know me. She put up something online that she snatched off social media, where a biologist was breaking down how complex gender identification is at a chromosome level. And I mean, I will utterly fail to give you the fine points of this, but I walked away from what she put up and kind of went, all right, okay, so really, gender on a biological level, on a cellular level, on a DNA level, on a chromosome level, I walked away going, all right, any of us could be anything. And so this outward form doesn't actually give us the real read of gender. And actually, it's really bloody hard to tell you what gender is. So then you start going, well, is gender a social construct? No, I don't. I'm not going to get into that water. I'm a good swimmer, but I will drown. I will drown in that water. But anyway, the whole idea then of sexual identity, gender identity, having this profoundly destructive impact on anyone's life, I'm like, get the hell out of here. Let people live their lives and sleep with who they want and be in love with who they want, because, I want to see better healthcare. I want to see better housing. They're the priorities. And gender, sexual identity, sexual preference, sexual behaviour, we'll get to a point. We will get to a point, and I think it's going to come around really soon, actually, where it just won't be a conversation. It won't be an issue. And people need to just bloody wake up and get into come into the 21st century. That sort of intolerance of sexual diversity, there's no place for it anymore. It's just, we should be operating at a much higher level. We should be much further down the track in terms of what socially concerns us. Yeah. And here's something else. Now this, I think, is from, for some reason I think this is like an American legal position. Because it says, one premise underlying First Amendment jurisprudence is the tolerance theory. The belief that promoting expressive freedoms will make individuals and institutions more open to ideas than they would be otherwise. And the origin of this idea can be traced to, yes, John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, also from 1869. So, expressive freedoms. I took a beat to go, what do they mean by that? So the freedom of expression, and that's the expression of your sexual identity, that's the expression of perhaps your religious beliefs, that's the expression of your political beliefs. It's the freedom of speech fundamentally, isn't it, in the American system? And having that freedom extended to everyone will make all individuals and institutions more open to ideas than they would be otherwise. So a really strong liberal idea. And what that should point out to you is the danger then of cancel culture, the danger of shutting people up, the danger of no platforming people, the danger of not having more information out there. It's so patronizing. And it's so juvenile, which are, they sound like they should be sort of coming from opposite ends of the spectrum. But like, it's patronizing to the people who would receive that information. It's patronizing to the people who would receive that opinion or that diatribe or that point of view. And it's so juvenile, the people who are doing the censoring, to cancel someone, to shut them up, to lock them in a room, to kick them out of the playground, to go, you can't play with us, you can't be in our playground. It doesn't matter. Bloody hell. Are you terrified of an opinion that's different to yours? And are you terrified to engage with someone whose behaviour you find intolerable? You can challenge them. You can express disagreement. But I mean, and of course, let's be clear here. If you're talking about behaviour that crosses over into criminality, if you're talking about behaviour that results in violence or murder, as it did last week, I mean, there should be no ambiguity about, well, yeah, you're getting put away. And as a society, we're not going to tolerate that any more than you want to tolerate anyone getting murdered or bashed. So that then comes back to my media kind of gripe earlier in today's episode. Okay, so I'm sure there was one other. I'm just kind of scrolling through my notes here. I thought there might have been one other nice one. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, Stuart Mill, he's just good at lots of things. He talks about the tyranny of the majority, an inherent weakness to majority rule in which the majority of an electorate pursues exclusively its own objectives at the expense of those of the minority factions. And so that's what, again, that also speaks to today's climate where, on sort of the progressive side of media, you've got people being grotesquely intolerant of counter opinions, and trying to shut them out. It's like I said moments ago, it's a very juvenile way to interact, and it doesn't lead to anyone's political or intellectual edification. John Stuart Mill also wrote an essay in 1869 with his wife, who's Harriet Mill, I think, called The Subjection of Women. And he said the legal subordination of one sex to the other is wrong in itself, and it is the chief hindrance to human improvement. And again, at the time, that was probably just a real binary debate, the rights of women versus the rights of men. But as we've seen, we're branching that out now, and in the context of sort of culture wars and identity politics, the subordination, the legal subordination of anyone to someone else in a free society is going to be a hindrance to human improvement. And so then it comes back to social and economic opportunity, and equal social and economic opportunity for everyone. And that's what you want I think that's what I want in a healthy, happy, democratic society. A distribution of wealth, a sensible long-term vision for the spending of taxes on things that are securing a better future for all of us. And that includes every single member of the LGBTQI community and everybody else as well. So there you go. I think I'm going to have to wrap it up there. I'm not sure what the concluding note for today's episode is. I will say sexuality and the expression of one's sexuality is not morality. Sexuality is not a value system. Sexuality shouldn't come into the field of ethics and morality as long as it's taking place between consenting adults. And if part of your morality or ethical view forbids certain iterations of sexuality and certain expressions of consensual adult sexuality, then I think the problem's with you. I think you need to have a look at your morality and have a look at why those expressions of sexual identity or gender identity are so threatening to your moral structure. I think that's a really key component of all of this. Sexuality is an expression of identity. It is an expression of one's civic liberty. It should be an expression of that. It's an expression of one's identity, one's desire, an expression of what one is attracted to, and that shouldn't threaten anyone. As long as, again, I think the consensual nature. You can be attracted to who you're attracted to, but then you've got to look at, and then this brings us back to the social, civic, political discussion, like what is society tolerating? And there are rules that make sense in terms of places you shouldn't go with your sexuality and your sexual desire, in terms of the vulnerable and those who are not in a position to consent. But apart from that, it should be, do what you have to do, and you shouldn't have to live in fear of any form of persecution or fear that the intolerance of others is going to make itself felt in sinister, destructive, violent ways. Really, what we're talking about is the merits of tolerance and the merits of kind of ethically driven intolerance, being intolerant of bad behaviour, being intolerant of homophobia, being intolerant of sexism, but not just a blanket intolerance. Having the conversation, asking the question, when it's raised in an early stage, in more innocuous places, like the arena of microaggressions, to be able to go, what's this about? What's that coming from? What is this threat you perceive? And can we help you feel less threatened? Can we disarm you and just make you feel it's safe for you to express your fears, your concerns? I don't know. I mean, it's like, just yeah, again, let's be talking, let's be examining, let's be supporting, and not just cancelling people. So there you go. I mean, there's nothing like, cancel culture is not healthy intolerance. How about that? How would I finish there? Cancel culture is not healthy intolerance. It's juvenile intolerance. And I'm not talking about not wanting to hang out with my daughter. That's another form of juvenile intolerance. Okay, I've got to go. I've got to go and teach them karate. Karate. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you stayed with me on this. I hope it hung together. John Locke, John Stuart Mill, legends. Legends. Love those guys. Love the Johnnies. The two Johnnies. There's two Johnnies I'd rather listen to than the other Egypts that are on the airwaves. Follow me on social media, The Clear Out Podcast on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, The Clear Out 2 on Twitter. Email me at theclearoutlive@gmail.com. Support me using the supporter link wherever you're listening to the podcast, or become a patron at patreon.com/The Clear Out. Thanks for your support. Thanks for listening. And I will talk to you again real soon. All the best. Be kind. Be tolerant. Behave. I'll see you soon. All the best. Cheers. Bye.